Hi, everybody. I'm Crystal Culp, and I work with the Gates grant and the NT3 grant in the state of Kentucky. And today I'm going to do a Component 1 content knowledge assessment test kind of training so you understand what's coming, what to expect when you go into the test session. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to get started on that PowerPoint. Alrighty, so content knowledge assessment, that's what Component 1 is about. Component 1 is a marathon, it is not a sprint. And what do we mean by that? It means that it requires studying all along, knowing your content, and it's not kind of a last minute thing. I know there are a lot of people who say that they're comfortable with their content, and that's great, but you need to really pay attention to what it is that National Board is asking you to know, all the different subject areas. So there are a few things that we want to pay attention to. There are 5 core propositions, and that second core proposition is the one that really applies to the Component 1 test. Teachers know the subjects they teach and how to teach those subjects to students. Some of the questions that you have will be related to the students or in a student type scenario. Okay, there's the architecture of accomplished teaching. I hope all of you have seen this at some point that has been provided by the National Board, and it is a way that we encourage candidates to look at their practice. Take any lesson plan that you're currently doing and walk it through this architecture of accomplished teaching, because all of the things that are asked of you in National Board certification goes through this architecture of accomplished teaching. Knowing the students and the subject area. Who are your students? Where are they now? What do they need? In what order do they need it? Where should I begin? Now, those are all things you're going to think about as you're planning content in your lesson plans that you'll do for Component 2 and 3. Now, how it applies to Component 1, the test, is knowing the subject area. But then that age group of students will also be reflected as you provide your answers to the questions that National Board presents to you. So what is Component 1? It assesses your fundamental content knowledge. It covers the entire developmental age for a given certificate. So if you are AYA Social Studies, for example, the Adolescent Young Adult Social Studies, but you only teach freshmen, keep in mind that it's going to ask you, to be able to respond for the entire age group of that certificate area, which is 7th through 12th grade. So if you're not familiar with those other age groups, you need to get familiar with them. If you're only used to teaching maybe government, realize that every subject within the social studies area then you would also be responsible for. If you are not comfortable with that content, you need to get comfortable with that content. So how do you do that? One of the best ways is to get a syllabus from teachers in your school that teach that content. If it's a different certificate where you're in an elementary or a middle school and there are not syllabuses that are attached to those courses, then you need to have conversations with the teachers in your building who are teaching that age student, who are teaching those particular subject areas. So there are 45 selected response items now. That is a change for National Board. This is the first time that multiple choice has been on the National Board test. So please be sure that you go through the practice prompt questions the National Board has provided to you, and those are provided online within your Component 1 instructions. These are standalone questions. There will be a passage that you'll read, or maybe there will be some sort of prompt at the top of the page that you will have to respond to, and there'll be a question at the bottom. I'll give you an example of the type of question that I had when I was taking the field test. It's not the exact question, but it's the type of question. At the top of the page, there was a primary resource. At the bottom of the page, the question began, you were with this group of students. It told me the age level, it told me the class we were in. One of your students makes this comment. Then they give me the quote that the student gave. And then the question is, what misconception does that student have about that primary resource? So there's a couple things I needed to know. I needed to know how students think. I needed to know what that primary resource was. And then it gave me a variety of options there for my multiple choice. That is the kind of question that we're talking about. Sometimes this is straight out content knowledge, and it has nothing to do with relating it to students or their learning. But sometimes it does. So you have to be prepared for those. There are also 3 constructed response items consisting of 1 or more prompts. In the past, there were 3 different questions attached to each one of those constructed response items. You've got 30 minutes to answer the constructed response item. So that gave you about 10 minutes to answer each specific question that was related to a prompt of some kind. Sometimes it was a classroom-based question where they give you a certain situation and then they ask you a question about that situation. How would you teach this to this group of students? So they all will have some sort of stimulus attached to them. Again, make sure you go through what National Board has provided to you to practice those sample questions. Okay, so when do we take Component 1 test? The testing window is open from March until mid-June. I have had several candidates ask me about getting that authorization to test. Once you go into the National Board system, you become a registered candidate, you pay for Component 1, National Board should send you an authorization to test. Once you receive that, then you will call Pearson to make your appointment. And how do you do that? There's the number for Pearson right there, and those are the hours that they're open. You need to be sure that you call as soon as you can to make this appointment. This test has to be taken at a testing center, and there are many located around the country, and we'll go over a list of some of those in just a moment. But you need to call as soon as you can to make that appointment, because you want to be sure that you get the day that you want, the time of day that you want. If you're a morning person, then you're going to want to take your test in the morning. If you're, an afternoon person, take it in the afternoon. So don't wait till the last minute and then get stuck with whatever is left. All right, where to take it? In Kentucky, the 2 primary locations are Louisville and Lexington. If you're in the western part of the state, you can go south to Nashville. That's closer than either of the locations in Kentucky. You can go north to Marion, Illinois. Then there are some other locations listed there for you that are close by. And then beyond, there are crazy stories about people who decide, as soon as school is out, it's summer vacation, it's still during the Component 1 testing window, so they decide to go somewhere exotic. They're going to take their National Board test, and then they're going to go on vacation afterwards. So there are some fun suggestions over there on the right-hand side. So 1 week before the assessment, you really should visit the assessment center. If not a week before, you need to do it the night before, because you don't want to get lost, you don't want to be late, because they're not going to admit you if you are late for your test appointment. Call that week before, just the assessment center, just to be sure that your appointment is when you think that it is. Plan for childcare. You can't take your child in with you, even if they're a little baby sitting in the car seat. You need to secure some childcare for them. Check your car, make sure it's in good working order. You don't want to have problems on the way. If you're going to Nashville, you're going to want to anticipate some traffic, so leave in plenty of time to get there. Any large city, leave in plenty of time to get there. And stay healthy. I know that's easier said than done, but sanitize like crazy and stay away from sick people. All right, on test day, you need to be well rested and well fed. This is the same kind of advice that we give to our students before they go in to take an ACT or SAT or even test in our classroom. You need to be sure to bring your photo ID that has your signature on it. That is, and your authorization to test. That number will also be very helpful in getting you into the testing center. If you forget your ID, they are not going to admit you, because they have to know that it is you. They even go as far as to take a picture of you. In some testing centers, you have to do a palm scan. So this is a very serious test, so don't take it lightly, and you have to have your ID, just like trying to get on a plane. If you need special accommodations, National Board is committed to meeting the needs of all of their candidates, but you have to let them know beforehand. And those special accommodations those requests have to be made in advance of the test. So you can find all that information on the National Board website. What you can bring in, you're very limited about the kinds of things that you can bring into the test. You can bring a tissue, but it can't be in a little plastic pouch. It has to be just a single tissue. You can bring in unwrapped cough drops. You can bring a pillow to sit up. You can, if you're diabetic, of course, you can bring your insulin. And then a whiteboard will be provided to you. A whiteboard is there to help you organize your thoughts, because you can't bring in a pen and paper, and you can't create an outline on anything that you bring in, but they will provide you that whiteboard. But you have to ask for it. They're not going to say, hey, here's your whiteboard, and then hand it to you. You have to request to get the whiteboard. Ethical issues. Don't ask about the questions. If you know somebody is going in to take the exact same test that you're getting ready to take, don't ask them what was on their test. And then if someone were to ask you, don't tell anybody what questions that you had, for a couple of reasons. The questions are likely to be different than the ones that were previously seen. But also, you put yourself and that other person at risk of never being able to earn National Board certification. There is confidentiality in those questions. So, that whole don't ask, don't tell about the test. It's very important. Assessment components. So there's the constructed response items. There are 3 questions, and they all have a 30-minute time limit. So a total of 90 minutes to take the constructed response. The constructed response has a timer that will let you know how much time you have left. But I warn you, once that timer goes off, there is no more time left. If you are mid-sentence, mid-word, it doesn't matter. You are done taking that. So you get into the area where you're going to answer the question and you start typing. My suggestion is create an outline for yourself within the test prompt answering section. Then you go back and add in details after you create that outline. It does a couple of things for you. It helps you get your main thoughts down on the page. If your time does run out, at least those thoughts are there, and National Board assessors knew what direction you were going in. And plus, it just helps keep your mind organized, and you don't get nervous or upset and then forget a whole portion of what it is that you meant to write about. Then you've got 45 questions in the selected response section. You've got 60 minutes to take those questions. Again, selected response means multiple choice, but there's quite a bit of reading along with that selected response or that multiple choice. So it's not like you really have a lot of time to get through that. If you are AYA English Language Arts, or EA English Language Arts, or EA AYA Math, or AYA Science, Chemistry, or Physics, you have an extended portion of time because of what is being asked of you to do, and the extended work that you have to complete, or the extended reading that you have to do. All right, things change. If you've already been to the National Board website and you've looked at the Component 1 directions, go back and look again before you go, because sometimes things change in the National Board website, and they will tell you that. Everything is subject to change. So you need to make sure that you have the most current information about your Component 1 items. All right, Component 1 knowledge at a glance. So this is an example that National Board provides for every certificate area about the selected response items and where the questions, what type of questions will be asked of you. So for this example, in art education, 35% of those will come from the National Board Standards 1, 3, 5, and 8. And then they kind of define the kinds of questions that they might be asking you. 35% of those questions will come from content and creation of art, which is Standard 9. And then 30% will come from the study of art, which is Standard 4 as well. So you need to make sure that you're familiar with The standards, more than familiar. If you've been working on another component in National Board, you should already have these National Board standards for your certification well embedded into your memory so that you can reflect on those standards. National Board wants you to answer these questions, but answer them with the language of the National Board standards. All right, selected response prep. So there are places where you can go to actually practice answering questions. One of the things that I would advise any candidate to do is find someone else who is also a candidate in your same certification. You all can study together. You all can write questions together. You all can practice answering each other's prompts and then going through the rubric and helping assess one another's answers and seeing the weakness in the answers that you provide. That's something that we do at our live home stretch that we have. We provide you a chance to practice. So we hope that and encourage you to enroll in one of those home stretch trainings. You can find those trainings at the KEA.org website, and they will be provided at a variety of places around Kentucky. So you need to examine Component 1 computer-based assessment in the overview. That means you need to go to your instructions and look at what National Board is asking you to do. Please read all the instructions. I know teacher time is very precious. Mine is, yours is, but this is very important to you. So you need to take the time to read every word of those instructions so that there are no surprises for you. Notice that computer-based assessment instruction or overview contains bold headings and bulleted content topics for each heading. Pay attention to those. National Board just didn't put them in there just to put them in there to have a list. Those are the things that you will see on your National Board Component 1 test. And it lists the standards that are addressed. Again, you need to know the standards. My advice about standards is keep them anywhere that you're idle. If you're having to take kids to ball games or some sort of practice, take it with you while you're waiting on them. Go through those standards. Keep them at a stoplight instead of checking your phone. Read a few standards so that you're ingraining those standards into your mind and your vocabulary. There is a percentage listed on there telling you exactly how many questions that you'll have in each content heading and what to expect. And there will be an overlap in the content between the selected response items and the constructed response items. And again, when you do those constructed response items, when you're writing in an essay type format, you're going to want to use the language of the National Board standards.